And now to a crime alert today in Tamarack. Authorities are trying to solve a murder mystery. A woman was found dead in her home earlier this week.
And you your front row seat to justice if you are just joining us.
And we kick off this hour in the state of Georgia.
In a News 3 follow-up, a Rincon woman is behind bars tonight.
A mother shot nearly a dozen times.
What y'all doing? Can you roll the window down for me? Can you roll the window down for me?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Truly Criminal Network.
Bulletin surveillance video may link Tampa rapper Billy Adams directly to a murder. That's some of the new evidence released in his case today. Now, Adams is the one who's accused of gunning down his pregnant girlfriend back in January. And you may remember the story. It was just 3 days after another jury found him not guilty of two unrelated murders.
The defendant is not guilty.
Tampa rapper Billy Adams beat 2 murder charges in January. And days later, prosecutors say he gunned down his pregnant girlfriend, Alana Sims.
A young mother lies motionless beside her SUV, blood pooling on the pavement around her. Inside the vehicle, her 23-month-old son sleeps peacefully in his car seat, unaware that his world has just been permanently shattered. This isn't a random act of violence. This was an execution, methodical, deliberate, and carried out by someone who knew exactly where she would be. Alana Sims was 22 years old and 5 months pregnant with her second child when multiple gunshots ended her life on a quiet street in Tampa, Florida. She believed she was meeting the father of her unborn baby for a celebration. Instead, she walked into an ambush planned by a man with a history of violence. A man who had just beaten a double murder charge 8 days earlier. This is the story of a calculated killing, a stolen future, and a justice system that failed to protect a young mother when she needed it most. Pictorial Park Drive in the Easton Park subdivision of New Tampa, January 30th, 2023. A neighborhood where families settle down, where children play in front yards, where violence seems impossibly distant. At 7:36 p.m., security cameras capture Alana's SUV following a black Chevy Malibu into the subdivision. The Malibu belongs to the father of Billy Adams III, a rising rapper known as Ace and H. At 8:21 p.m., only the Malibu exits. Alana's vehicle remains. For nearly 2 hours, no one notices anything unusual. Then around 10 p.m., a passerby spots what appears to be a body on the ground. Police arrive to find Alana with multiple gunshot wounds to her upper body. No signs of robbery, no signs of struggle. Just the precise violence of someone who wanted her, and her unborn child, eliminated from his life. The evidence tells a story that no alibi can hide. What would make a pregnant mother drive to an unfamiliar neighborhood at night with her toddler? Text messages recovered from Alana's phone reveal an invitation. Billy Adams wanted to celebrate, but celebrate what? Just 1 day earlier, he had sent a message to a friend that investigators would later flag as evidence of premeditation. The invitation wasn't for a celebration. It was a trap. A solution to a problem Adams didn't want to face. The problem was Alana's pregnancy, a 5-month reality he could no longer ignore or deny. For investigators, questions multiplied with each piece of evidence. Why bring her to an empty street? Why leave her child alive in the car? How could someone execute a woman carrying his own child? And most disturbing, how could this happen just days after he walked free from another murder case? Before we continue with Alana's story, take a moment to subscribe to Truly Criminal Network. We bring you cases that major media outlets often gloss over, stories that reveal the true darkness hiding beneath everyday life. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our weekly uploads that expose killers who thought they were too clever to get caught. The story of Alana Sims isn't just about a murder. It's about a system that allowed a violent man to walk free and claim another victim just days later. It's about the extreme vulnerability of pregnant women facing rejection from their partners. And it's about a mother whose only crime was wanting to keep her baby. Stay with us as we reveal how investigators dismantled Billy Adams' carefully constructed lies, the evidence that sealed his fate, and the text messages that proved this wasn't a split-second decision, but a murder he had planned all along. Born on February 13, 2000, Alana Sims grew up in Tampa, Florida as the middle child of 3 sisters. Her family described her as humble, caring, and deeply committed to her loved ones. Unlike many 22-year-olds who might be focused on social activities or nightlife, Alana's world revolved around her family, particularly her 23-month-old son. She was a person who put her family first, her mother Alana Sims would later tell reporters. Those who knew Alana spoke of her peaceful nature and gentle disposition. She had graduated from Chamberlain High School in Tampa and was building a life centered on nurturing those around her. At the time of her death, Alana was 5 months pregnant with her second child. Friends noted how excited she had been about the pregnancy, despite the complications it brought to her relationship. Her daily routines were built around creating a safe, loving environment for her toddler. Neighbors often saw her taking walks with her son, reading to him, and spending quality time together. Her family paints a portrait of a young woman who embraced motherhood with grace and resilience, someone whose quiet dignity and maternal instincts defined her short life. Billy Adams III moved in music industry circles in Tampa, where he performed as a rapper under the name Ace NH. At 25, he projected the confidence of someone on the rise, attracting attention from those around him. His connection with Alana began like many modern relationships, casual encounters that gradually deepened. What Alana couldn't have known when they met was the violence that lurked beneath Adams' charismatic exterior. Their worlds were fundamentally different. Her life centered on family and stability. His revolved around an image of toughness and ambition. They began seeing each other regularly, with Adams initially showing interest in Alana's life and her young son. Text messages recovered during the investigation revealed early conversations filled with affection and plans for getting together. To those who knew them as a couple, they seemed an unlikely match. The quiet, family-oriented young mother and the aspiring rapper with big dreams. Yet for a time, their relationship appeared to work, with Adams integrating himself into Alana's life and presenting himself as someone who could be part of her future. As weeks turned into months, Adams and Alana's relationship progressed. They spent time together with her son, creating memories that Alana likely treasured. According to family accounts, she was cautious but hopeful about their future together. When Alana discovered she was pregnant with their child, the dynamic shifted. Initially, there were moments of apparent happiness. Phone records show increased communication between them as they discussed the pregnancy and what it might mean for their relationship. By the 5-month mark of her pregnancy, Alana had fully embraced the reality of having a second child. She began making preparations, talking with family about her hopes, and including Adams in discussions about their future baby. Police interviews with mutual friends revealed that Alana believed Adams would eventually step up and embrace fatherhood. She shared ultrasound images with him and talked about names. Text messages show she invited him to doctor's appointments and made efforts to include him in the pregnancy journey. What she couldn't see was that behind his occasional displays of interest lay a growing resentment and a decision that would prove fatal. By January 2023, cracks in the relationship had become impossible to ignore. Adams began missing appointments related to the pregnancy. He questioned whether he was really the father. His messages became shorter, less frequent, and often dismissive. Friends reported that Alana confided her concerns, but remained determined to make things work for the sake of her unborn child. She continued reaching out to Adams, trying to involve him in preparations for the baby's arrival. What Alana didn't know was that Adams was actively plotting an exit strategy, one that would ensure he would never face paternal responsibilities. Phone records show him researching how child support worked in Florida. He made comments to friends about not wanting another baby mama drama. As her pregnancy progressed, Adams' behavior grew increasingly distant. Witnesses later told police that he would publicly ignore Alana at events they both attended. When pressed about the pregnancy by mutual acquaintances, he would change the subject or deny responsibility. The final weeks of January saw their interactions reduced to tense exchanges about the future, a future Adams had already decided to end. On January 29, 2023, just one day before the murder, Adams sent a message that investigators would later view as the smoking gun of premeditation. The text, sent to a friend rather than to Alana herself, stated bluntly, "Tomorrow this expletive is done." In context with his other communications that day, the message left little doubt about his intentions. He had made his decision. The pregnancy, the relationship, the responsibility, all of it would be eliminated. Hours later, he contacted Alana with an invitation to meet for what he described as a celebration. She accepted, unaware that his words carried a double meaning, not a celebration of their relationship or the coming baby, but Adams' anticipated freedom from both. On January 30th, 2023, Billy Adams III contacted Alana with a message that seemed designed to ensure her appearance. He suggested meeting in the Easton Park neighborhood for what he vaguely described as an important get-together. The carefully worded message gave no indication of danger. Text records show Alana responded enthusiastically. For a young mother who had been facing increasing rejection, this outreach likely represented hope. Perhaps Adams was finally coming around about the pregnancy. Perhaps he wanted to make amends and discuss their future together. She placed her toddler in his car seat and drove to the Easton Park subdivision in New Tampa. What should have been a meaningful conversation was, in reality, a trap meticulously planned by Adams. The location wasn't chosen randomly. It was a relatively quiet residential area where Adams believed they wouldn't be interrupted. Security cameras at the entrance to Easton Park captured the sequence of events with precise timing. At 7:22 p.m., a black Chevy Malibu registered to Adams' father entered the subdivision. 14 minutes later, at 7:36 p.m., cameras recorded Alana's SUV following the same route into the neighborhood. The video evidence places both vehicles in the same vicinity at the same time, contradicting Adams' initial claim that he was elsewhere that evening. For nearly an hour, both cars remained in the neighborhood. Then at 8:21 p.m., the cameras captured the Chevy Malibu exiting the subdivision. Notably, Alana's vehicle did not leave. This video evidence became crucial to investigators as it established not only Adams' presence at the scene but also the window of time during which the murder must have occurred. The 45-minute period between their arrival and Adams' departure contained the final moments of Alana's life, moments that investigators would work painstakingly to reconstruct. Based on evidence collected at the scene, investigators believe Adams and Alana met and spoke briefly outside their vehicles. There were no signs of a prolonged discussion or argument, no scattered personal items, no indications that Alana had attempted to flee. The lack of defensive wounds on Alana's body suggested she was caught completely off guard. Medical examiners determined she was shot multiple times at close range, with wounds concentrated in her upper body. The positioning indicated she was facing her killer when the first shot was fired. Most telling was the fact that Alana's son remained asleep in his car seat throughout the encounter. Had there been a loud argument or struggle, the child likely would have awakened. This detail reinforced investigators' belief that the attack came suddenly and without warning. What words passed between them in those final moments? Did Adams reveal his true intentions? Did Alana have any chance to plead for her life or the life of her unborn child? These questions haunt the case, their answers known only to the man who pulled the trigger. The medical examiner's report revealed the brutal efficiency of the attack. Multiple gunshot wounds to Alana's upper body indicated the shooter stood at close range, firing with deadly intent. The wounds showed no downward or upward trajectory, suggesting the shooter and victim were on equal footing when the shots were fired. The precision of the wounds left no doubt about the intent to kill. There were no hesitation marks, no signs the shooter had second thoughts. Each bullet found its mark with terrible effectiveness. The medical examiner determined death would have been rapid. Alana, 5 months pregnant with a baby who would never take a breath, collapsed beside her vehicle. Her 23-month-old son, mercifully, slept through his mother's murder. No weapon was recovered at the scene, a fact that would later contradict Adams' claim that Alana had drawn a gun on him. The evidence pointed clearly to a one-sided execution rather than any form of confrontation. After the shooting, Adams returned to the black Chevy Malibu and drove away, leaving Easton Park at 8:21 p.m., according to security footage. He made no calls to emergency services. He sought no help for Alana or her child. He simply left them, one dead, one alive but alone, and continued with his evening as if nothing had happened. For nearly 2 hours, Alana's body remained undiscovered on Pictorial Park Drive. Her SUV, with her sleeping son inside, attracted no immediate attention in the residential neighborhood. When a passerby finally noticed something unusual around 10 p.m., they initially mistook the scene, thinking perhaps someone was intoxicated on the ground. Upon closer inspection, the horrifying reality became clear. Emergency services were called. Police arrived to find Alana beyond help, while her son, now awake and confused, remained strapped in his car seat, unharmed but forever changed. The evidence against Billy Adams III was mounting, but what investigators didn't yet know was that this wasn't his first encounter with murder charges. If you're finding this case as disturbing as our research team did, make sure you're subscribed to Truly Criminal Network for weekly deep dives into cases that mainstream media often overlooks. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on the evidence so far. Could this have been prevented? What red flags did everyone miss? In just a moment, we'll reveal the shocking truth about Adams' past, information that would have saved Alana's life had she known it just 8 days earlier. At 25 years old, Billy Adams III had built a persona in Tampa's music scene as Ace NH, an aspiring rapper seeking fame and notoriety. His social media accounts displayed the trappings of an up-and-coming artist, studio sessions, performances at local venues, and connections with other musicians in the Florida hip-hop community. Beyond the carefully constructed image, Adams cultivated relationships that would bolster his music career. He frequented recording studios around Tampa and worked to expand his audience through online platforms and local performances. Those who knew Adams in music circles described him as ambitious and intensely focused on his career. The responsibilities of fatherhood had no place in the future he envisioned for himself. When confronted with Alana's pregnancy, associates later told investigators Adams viewed it as an obstacle to his ambitions rather than a life-changing blessing. His public persona gave no hint of the violence he was capable of, or the fact that just days before Alana's murder, he had faced serious charges that could have put him behind bars for life. What Alana Sims may not have known or fully understood was that Billy Adams III had just walked free from a Tampa courtroom after being acquitted of a double homicide. The timing couldn't have been more significant in understanding what followed. The case stemmed from a 2020 incident at a recording studio in Lutz, Florida. Adams had been charged with killing 2 men during what prosecutors described as a dispute that escalated to violence. Throughout that trial, Adams and his defense team maintained that he had acted in self-defense, claiming he feared for his life during the encounter. Despite prosecutors' efforts, the jury accepted Adams' self-defense claim and delivered a not guilty verdict. After spending time in custody awaiting trial, Adams was released, free to resume his life and, as events would soon prove, free to kill again. The proximity between his January 22nd acquittal and Alana's January 30th murder raises disturbing questions about whether his earlier legal victory emboldened him to solve another problem with violence. Investigators examining Adams' history noted a disturbing behavioral pattern. When confronted with problems, he resorted to extreme measures while later claiming justification for his actions. In the double homicide case, Adams had convinced a jury that his actions were defensive rather than aggressive. When questioned about Alana's murder, he initially denied being present at the scene. When confronted with surveillance evidence proving his presence, he changed his story, ultimately claiming that Alana had pulled a gun on him, forcing him to shoot her in self-defense. This claim fell apart under scrutiny. No weapon was found at the scene beside Alana's body. The position of her wounds contradicted a scenario where she would have been threatening him. Most damningly, the premeditated nature of the meeting, specifically arranging to meet in an isolated location, undermined any suggestion that Adams had acted spontaneously in self-defense. Law enforcement officials noted that Adams appeared to have learned from his previous trial. He understood how to frame violent acts as defensive measures and seemed to believe the strategy would work again. The pattern revealed someone who not only resorted to violence, but had developed a formula for attempting to justify it afterward. Text messages recovered during the investigation laid bare Adams' motive for killing Alana. Messages to friends in the weeks leading up to the murder showed his growing resentment about the pregnancy and his desire to avoid paternal responsibilities. His research history revealed searches about child support laws in Florida and the financial obligations of fatherhood, concerns that apparently weighed heavily on his mind. As a man focused on his music career, Adams viewed the prospect of supporting a child as an unwelcome burden on his ambitions and finances. The clearest indication of his intentions came in the message sent the day before the murder: "Tomorrow this expletive is done." This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision, but a calculated plan to permanently eliminate his responsibilities. The prosecutor's assessment was blunt. Adams murdered Alana Sims specifically to avoid becoming a father to their unborn child. The location, the timing, the method, all pointed to a man who had decided that killing the mother of his unborn child was preferable to the lifetime commitment of parenthood. This motive, as old as it is tragic, transformed what might have been family court proceedings into a deliberate execution that left a young mother dead, a toddler motherless, and an unborn child who never had a chance at life. When first questioned, Billy Adams III denied any involvement in Alana's death. He provided investigators with a video he claimed proved he was elsewhere at the time of the murder. This would become his first critical mistake. Investigators subjected the video to digital forensic analysis, examining the metadata embedded within the file. What they discovered demolished Adams' alibi. The video hadn't been recorded on January 30th, as he claimed, but 2 days after the murder. The timestamp had been deliberately manipulated to create a false alibi. This digital evidence, combined with the security footage showing his father's Chevy Malibu entering and leaving Easton Park subdivision at the exact times corresponding to the murder, placed Adams at the scene beyond reasonable doubt. Phone records further contradicted his claims, showing his mobile device in the vicinity of the crime scene during the critical time window. The technical evidence created an irrefutable timeline that prosecutors would later use to demonstrate both Adams' presence and his attempts to cover his tracks through technological deception. The physical evidence recovered from the scene and subsequent searches provided investigators with crucial links to Adams. During a search of the vehicle Adams had been driving, officers discovered live ammunition that ballistics tests later confirmed matched the caliber used in the shooting. Perhaps most damning to Adams' eventual self-defense claim was what wasn't found at the scene: a weapon. Despite Adams' later assertion that Alana had pulled a gun on him, no firearm was recovered near her body or inside her vehicle. This absence directly contradicted his narrative and suggested he had fabricated the threat to justify his actions. The position and nature of Alana's wounds also told a story at odds with self-defense. Medical examiners determined she had been shot multiple times at close range, with wound patterns indicating she had been facing her attacker and had not been in a threatening posture. Together, the collected evidence painted a picture not of a spontaneous act of self-protection, but of a premeditated execution carried out with deliberate intent. As evidence mounted, investigators brought Adams in for formal questioning. The interrogation revealed a man whose story evolved with each new piece of evidence presented to him. Initially, Adams maintained complete innocence, insisting he was nowhere near the scene. When confronted with the security footage of his vehicle, he acknowledged being in the area but denied any interaction with Alana. As digital evidence from his phone placed him precisely at the location of the murder, his narrative shifted again. Finally, when presented with the overwhelming physical and digital evidence, Adams admitted to shooting Alana. However, he introduced a new claim that she had drawn a weapon on him, forcing him to fire in self-defense, a direct echo of his successful defense in the previous double homicide case. Interrogation transcripts showed detectives pressing Adams on the inconsistencies in his account, the absence of the alleged weapon, his premeditated text message stating, "Tomorrow this expletive is done," and his deliberate creation of a false alibi video, actions inconsistent with someone who had acted in legitimate self-defense. On February 8, 2023, just 9 days after Alana's murder, police formally arrested Billy Adams III. He was charged with first-degree murder, a capital offense in Florida. Additionally, prosecutors added charges specifically related to the death of Alana's unborn child, recognizing 2 victims in this tragedy. The arrest came as Adams was still basking in the freedom granted by his acquittal in the double homicide case. Court documents revealed that the prosecution viewed this as a case of premeditated murder, citing the incriminating text message sent the day before as definitive evidence of planning and intent. The case against Billy Adams III continues to move through Florida's judicial system. Prosecutors announced their intention to seek the death penalty under Florida's revised guidelines, which now require only an 8-4 jury vote to recommend capital punishment. Adams' defense team has contested this application of the death penalty statute, arguing it represents an unconstitutional retroactive imposition of the law. This legal challenge has added another layer of complexity to an already high-profile case. As court proceedings advance, Alana's family attends every hearing, determined to see the process through to its conclusion, whatever form justice may ultimately take for the young mother and her unborn child. In the aftermath of Alana's murder, Tampa residents organized vigils and memorial services to honor her life. These gatherings became spaces not only for grief but for community action. Fundraisers established for Alana's son ensured the toddler would have financial support despite losing his mother. Her family, now raising the child, has received an outpouring of assistance from neighbors, friends, and even strangers moved by the tragedy. Local support networks expanded their services for pregnant women facing rejection or hostility from partners. Alana's story has become a powerful reminder of the vulnerability some mothers face and the importance of community safety nets when private relationships turn dangerous. Alana's murder highlights a disturbing reality: pregnant women face heightened risks of violence from intimate partners. Research shows that homicide is a leading cause of death during pregnancy, with many cases involving partners who reject parental responsibility. The case has prompted discussions among advocates and policymakers about gaps in protection for vulnerable mothers. Questions persist about how the justice system handles individuals with violent histories and how communities can better identify those at risk. Legal experts point to this case when discussing the effectiveness of self-defense claims in court and whether current standards adequately protect potential victims from those with patterns of violent behavior. If this story has affected you, we need your help to keep these crucial conversations going. Subscribe to Truly Criminal Network now and turn on notifications so you never miss our investigations into cases that demand attention. Share this video with someone who needs to understand the real dangers many women face. Your comments help us refine our coverage and highlight aspects of these cases that mainstream media often overlooks. For those wondering how to support families like Alana's, we've included links below to verified organizations that assist children who have lost parents to violence and provide protection for women in vulnerable situations. Alana Sims was more than a victim in a headline. Born on February 13, 2000, she would have celebrated her 23rd birthday just 2 weeks after her life was taken. She was a middle sister among 3, a graduate of Chamberlain High School, and a mother who placed her child's needs above all else. Those who knew her speak of her humble nature, her peaceful disposition, and the quiet dignity with which she approached motherhood. Her life, though cut tragically short, left an indelible mark on her community and on the son who will grow up hearing stories of his mother's love and devotion. Alana's legacy lives on in the safety measures and support systems now strengthened in her name.